Hello, this is David Starr, and welcome to this module in the Mastering the Marketplace series. This module will focus on the SaaS API Client Library for .NET. Let's see what we'll cover. We'll see where we can find the library and look at what it is. We'll also find out where it lives on NuGet. I'll show you a little command line application that uses the client library that I whipped up just to show its basic functionality. And then we'll lightly look at the functionality of the library, as you'll see a lot more of that in future modules. So let's get going. Let's learn a little bit about this client library first. This client library makes coding against the marketplace SaaS APIs much easier for .NET applications. And we can find this client library always linked to from our marketplace samples repository. Let's go there now. Here we are at the commercial marketplace samples repository on GitHub. And the thing about this page is that it's going to be updated continuously with lots of resources and samples and things that can help you do your implementation of your marketplace offer much more quickly. We're going to focus on SaaS offers right now, and particularly if we look under SaaS offers and come down to the client library for .NET, you see that we have a link straight to its repository. So let's go there first. Here we are in the commercial marketplace client.net repository. And if you scroll down just a little bit, you'll see that it has some sample code, just a little bit to help you get going. And we'll look at how this really works in our sample application in a few minutes, but it also gives you some advice for running the unit tests. And that's where you can really learn how it works. For now, let's go back to our samples library and scroll down once again to that link to the client library for .NET. Now over here on the right, we have a link to the NuGet package. Let's check that out. Here's a direct link to the NuGet package. And again, it has a little bit of sample code to help get you started. If you come into the NuGet package management site and you search for marketplace.saas.api, you're going to get two packages returned. One of those is the Azure Marketplace SaaS API client. Now, it does currently have far more downloads than the other library. However, it turns out that this is the new release of that library and the one that you want to download, marketplace.saas.client. And that's the one that we're going to be using in our sample application later. Let's get back to that. There's another video that you may have already seen in this series on setting up an application registration. Now I'm going to assume that you know how to do that for your own app and to register with a client secret, because that's what I've done for my little command line application that we're about to see. I'll just pop over to Visual Studio Code where we have this C# program set up, and I'll look at the absolute simplest program you can imagine talking to the client library. The first thing we do is validate that we're being passed 4 arguments. We want the tenant ID, the client secret, and a subscription ID so that we can go fetch that subscription and just show it to the screen in a command line application. Very simple stuff. So I'm going to collapse that up so we can look at the rest of the code. And all we're doing here next is parsing out our different arguments. Great. And then we get a credential, a client secret credential using those arguments. And then with that, we new up a marketplace client instance. With that marketplace client instance, you can see that we're calling the marketplace fulfillment.getSubscription function, turning our subscription ID into a good. So we get back from that an actual subscription object. And then you can see all we're doing is printing out a few attributes of that subscription object. Now let's look at how to run this little program. I've got that set up over here in this file, runit.ps1, and all it does is call .NET run on the application, passing the arguments that we expect. So let's have a run at it. There we go with runit.ps1, and it comes back with our subscription details. Subscription name, ID, a plan ID, and the date it was created. Perfect. So that's our very simple little command line application. And I'll get it loaded up into the repository for you soon so that you can use it to play around and experiment with the client library if you'd like to. Speaking of playing around and touring the library a little bit, let's have a look at some other things that we can do while we're in here playing with the marketplace client. So let's go to the marketplace client and look at not only fulfillment, but we have an operations API here. So we can get a list of current operations that might be going on, like change plan or something like that, that is a temporary operation that's going to run, and we can get operation status against a specific operation to monitor its status. Note that all of the API functions have async overloads, so we can await them, which is great. Let's go back to fulfillment for a moment and see that we can activate a subscription, we can delete a subscription, we can list available plans for a given subscription, and all these things can be done async as well, as you may be noticing. We can do something that's magic for our homepage. We've got to resolve our subscription, and we'll do that in a future video where we show you a very simple landing page. So those are just some of the things that we can think about when we look at this client library. Think about things you can do with it. So you might grab this little command line app, play around with it, print out some other stuff. All right, what did we cover? Well, we talked about the SaaS Client Library, and we introduced it through its GitHub repository, and then we looked at how to use it as a dependency in a client. We saw how to use it to make a simple call, and we looked at a few more capabilities of the library. We toured it a little bit to see what we can operate on. Now remember, you can always get to the client library by going to aka.ms/marketplace samples. That will take you to that samples repo that points out to all of the other resources that we make available for you. Thank you for joining me in another module of the Mastering the Marketplace series focused on SaaS offers. Happy coding!